All right, I was blessed to be featured in a segment of CBN News about street preachers and street preaching, because there's a street preaching case that went to the Supreme Court, and so they wanted some street preachers to interview. So here's that segment. You can see I got a little cameo, and then also watch till the end, because I filmed the entire interview that I had, and you can watch the entire interview at the end.
Gabriel Olivier, an evangelical street preacher, says a Brandon, Mississippi law barring him from public property violated his religious freedom and right to free speech. After lower courts blocked him from challenging the law, the U.S. Supreme Court takes up a procedural question that could set a precedent for future free speech disputes.
I made some mistakes.
At the Brandon Amphitheater, concerts draw big audiences.
I love to go out and tell folks about Jesus.
Olivier sees those crowds as an opportunity to share his faith.
They hand out gospel tracts to people and tell them about the message of Christ as they're walking to the concert.
After complaints that he spoke too loud and shouted insults, the city used a local ordinance ordering Olivier to stay within a designated protest area around the amphitheater. When he returned to the main walkway, authorities cited, fined, and gave him a suspended 10-day jail sentence.
They refer to it as a protest and a demonstration. And of course, evangelism really doesn't amount to those things. So by utilizing these vague terms, in practicality and in application, it really becomes a situation where the city removes and silences a speech that they don't like.
Olivier didn't appeal because that would have only challenged the conviction, not the ordinance. Instead, he sued to prevent the city from using the law again. Lower courts threw it out, however, saying he used a process meant for only people in custody. Since Olivier served no time, his lawyer sought no other recourse.
Religious liberty really is front and center of this issue, and the reason is because this guarantee that we have to freely exercise our religion, this guarantee that we have to share our faith to fellow citizens in public, really is meaningless if we don't have the opportunity to protect those rights in court.
The city of Brandon disagrees, and in a statement to CBN News, the city's attorney writes, the petitioner was convicted under a municipal ordinance and elected not to utilize any of the mechanisms available under Mississippi law to challenge it. Instead, while on probation, he collaterally attacked his criminal judgment through a civil tort lawsuit that requested monetary damages and attorney's fees, among other relief. Both the district court and the Fifth Circuit rejected the petitioner's subversion of state law.
Jesus is the answer.
Free speech advocates believe the case raises a broader concern over the use of designated protest zones to limit public expression and local government's power to control speech in public spaces.
If they can limit your free speech in a public park, then they have, really taken away a fundamental right. And it just becomes more and more restrictive.
The justices will not rule on whether Brandon's ordinance violates the First Amendment, only whether Olivier still has standing to sue after his conviction and whether people not in jail can challenge a law before it's used again. The ruling could redefine when citizens can fight local laws they believe go too far. A decision is expected later this term. In Washington, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
All right, so that was it. That was a blessing to be a part of CBN News. And now for the entire interview, just keep watching.
All right, so awesome, Jesse. Tell me more. And by the way, thanks again for doing this. I'm really glad I found your name online.
Yes.
Obviously, a case like this is at the Supreme Court, which is going to take a look at, Gabriel Olivier versus the city of Brandon, barred from evangelizing outside a Mississippi amphitheater after, they say he shouted insults at people over a loudspeaker. But more broadly, the fact that the Supreme Court is going to consider, this case, what does this mean to street preachers that something like this is being taken so seriously, at the highest court in the land?
Yeah, well, I think it's very meaningful that the Supreme Court's going to take the case. I think that means they see something there. This is a problem that we deal with all over the country, especially at events that are open to the public and therefore should be open to free speech, but they try to put you into isolated free speech zones, or what this city called the protest zone. I would object to the whole idea of being classified as a protester, that, we're preachers, not protesters. But they try and put you in an isolated location that's away from all the people. So that was, the real heart of the problem in this case, was that he no longer had access to the people he was trying to reach at a public event that was open to the public. Typically, if an event wants to bar street preachers from attending the event, then they would, barricade the event and have a gate and charge an entry fee. And if they charge a ticket, then they can control, who's allowed in, and they can remove people from the event. But if it's an open public event in a public park, they really shouldn't have any right to limit, who's allowed there. And if you're allowed there, then your rights, carry with you. And that includes, freedom of speech. So I think also the catch-22 of this case was that they said, according to this Heck versus Humphrey precedent, that he can't bring a civil lawsuit for a offense that he was convicted of. And so you would normally have to do a habeas corpus, if I said that right, which is the legal avenue for someone convicted of a crime to then challenge in court. But because he wasn't actually arrested, he was only ticketed, they're saying that he can't do that either. So he's in a catch-22 where he has no legal path forward. So I think that's really what the Supreme Court's going to be looking at, is can this Heck versus Humphrey be applied to him and bar him from challenging this law? And that's the difficulty that he's in there.
What is the importance of the work that you guys do, street preachers in general, as the people trying to get the gospel to people, spread the word? How important is this that you have access to these crowds and you can go in public and you can actually reach actual people without being stuffed somewhere else?
Well, I think freedom of speech is fundamental to our society. It's fundamental to the liberty that our country was built upon. Places like parks and street corners, city sidewalks, those are traditional public forum, which means, anyone should have the right to go and to speak their mind there. And so it's not just about street preachers. It's not just about, Christians. It's really about the Constitution. It's about the liberty and rights of our country as a whole. Now, I know that they say that this protest zone is for everybody. So it's not, content discriminatory. It's not just for street preachers or for Christians. But limiting everyone's free speech is still a hindrance on free speech. And the fact that they keep mentioning, the types of things he was saying, like, he used words like Jezebel, or he used words like drunkards, that makes it sound like it is actually content-based discrimination. But freedom of speech in a public park, that's everybody's right. And so I think this case is important, not just for street preachers, but for everybody, to protect the freedom of speech of everyone.
In your line of work, what kind of pushback is very typical in a society that seems to be getting increasingly happy to be violent, be discriminatory in some ways? What are you guys facing when you're out there? Has it gotten worse?
Well, in my 25 years of evangelism, I've seen it all out on the streets. I've been kicked, I've been punched, I've been spat upon, I've been knocked out, I've been falsely arrested, falsely imprisoned. I've had a gun pulled on me. I've had all sorts of, violent interactions and opposition, not just from, an unsaved world, but the worst is the opposition you get from the police. The police and the judges and the courts. I always advise street preachers to stay out of the courts, because there's no telling if you're really going to get any justice in there. Some officers are great and they're believers and they say they love what we're doing. Other officers are clearly convicted of their sin and want to, arrest you because, they have a personal animosity towards you. And so, out on the streets, it really is a battle. I think it is getting worse in some ways and better in others. There is a rise, obviously, in the riots that are going on across the country that have been going on for quite a few years now. That has definitely escalated. But on the other hand, this generation is not a generation that's in rebellion against their Christian parents. You know, their parents are more pagan. And so the younger generation seems a bit more open to the gospel because Christianity might be their way of rebelling against their pagan parents. So.
Yeah, no kidding. Definitely. So, you know, for the outcome of this case, potentially, how closely will you be watching? You know, you didn't quite know about it. It just kind of came out recently that they were going to hear this case. How important do you think this is going to be to what you and other street preachers are doing? I know broadly it's important to everyone, but specifically you guys, you know, what would your ideal be that came out of this?
Well, ideally, you know, they're going to outline exactly, you know, what legal path forward he should take to challenge the constitutionality of this law. I think any Supreme Court legal precedent, you know, affects all of us. If small cities can limit your free speech in public parks, and they can isolate you from the rest of the crowd, then that really, you know, limits our ability to reach the masses and to reach people. And it would affect everyone because these, you know, these attorneys, they all know each other and they all talk. And so, you know, what one small city establishes and gets away with, you know, other city attorneys might, you know, follow that lead. And so it's really, you know, it is an important case to follow. And I'm very interested to see what direction the court rules.
Have you heard anything from any? I know your organization. I believe you're kind of a grouping, you know, a resource for other street preachers, correct? How many organizations do you work with? What exactly do you guys do?
Yeah, well, the street preacher community is a well-connected community. We have conferences and we, you know, coordinate for events. So I know, you know, hundreds of street preachers all over the country. I've created materials to help street preachers. I have videos on how to deal with the police and how to deal with lawsuits and, you know, legal rights of street preachers. And so I try to equip, you know, people out there. After 25 years on the streets, I've learned quite a few things and, you know, tips and tricks on how to deal with it. I think it would have been very good had he avoided arrest altogether. As soon as they put him into that free speech zone, he at that point already had a legal basis for challenging the law. You know, he didn't have to leave the protection of that protest zone. He didn't have to be ticketed. He didn't have to be arrested. As soon as they enforced that law upon his free speech, he had a legal right. So I always tell street preachers, if they give you a chance to leave, then leave. You don't need to be arrested or ticketed. But at that point, once they ask you to leave, now you have a legal basis to challenge it. And it speeds up the process. And then you don't have to worry about a criminal case. You can just go straight to the civil case.
Final thoughts. Is there anything, that was great, by the way. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think is important to add as this case, I'm not sure when it's going to be heard, but, you know, as we head, you know, to oral arguments at some point, probably in the new year, I'd imagine, what are, you know, final thoughts? Anything I didn't ask you want to add?
No, I just think that, you know, if they can limit your free speech in a public park, then they have, you know, really taken away a fundamental right. You know, public parks, city streets, that's traditional public forum. And so that, you know, needs to be protected at all costs. If they can put you in a free speech zone, then, you know, the next thing that comes is free speech hours, and then comes free speech permits. And then you have the same type of censorship that we deal with sometimes on college campuses, where they give you a free speech zone and limited hours, and you have to apply for a permit. And then again, that's not enough for them. Then they say you have to apply for the permit 3 weeks in advance or 3 months in advance. And it just becomes more and more restrictive. And so any restrictions on free speech, you know, is a slippery slope, and it just gets worse from there. So traditional public forum like public parks, that needs to be, you know, protected, you know, to the fullest.
Awesome. That was great, Jesse. I'm going to stop the recording.
Recording stopped.
Perfect.